The massive chamber floated in space like a crystal palace, its walls made of materials that bent light in impossible ways. Inside, creatures from dozens of worlds gathered around a circular platform that glowed with soft blue energy. Some walked on legs, others floated in the air, and a few existed as pure light contained in metal shells. This was the Galactic Council, the most powerful group of beings in the known universe. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of the platform, his simple blue uniform looking plain next to the amazing technology around him. His hand stayed at his sides as he watched the alien beings laugh and point at the holographic display floating above his head. The display showed human spaceships, small metal vessels that looked like toys compared to the massive alien warships surrounding the station. Ambassador Zixathera rose from her seat, her body made of living crystal that changed colors as she moved. She was 12 feet tall and her voice sounded like music when she spoke, but her words were far from kind. The crystal being gestured at the human ships with one of her forearms and the laughter grew louder. "Look at these pathetic metal boxes they call starships," she said, her voice reaching every corner of the chamber through invisible speakers. "Their fastest ship can barely reach half the speed of light, and their weapons are nothing more than simple projectile throwers. My own personal yacht moves faster than their military vessels." The other aliens found this incredibly funny. The Marathi delegates, who looked like giant slugs covered in slime, made wet gurgling sounds that meant they were amused. The Kretak representatives, insect-like creatures with 6 arms and razor-sharp claws, clicked their mandibles together in what passed for laughter among their kind. Even the mysterious ethereal collective, beings of pure energy who rarely showed emotion, pulsed with bright colors that indicated they found the situation entertaining. Behind Morrison, Lieutenant Lisa Grant clenched her fists so hard her knuckles turned white. She wanted to speak up, to defend her species, but she knew better than to interrupt during an official hearing. Her brown eyes burned with anger as she watched the aliens mock everything humanity had worked to achieve in space. Morrison had been in the military for 20 years and had seen combat on 3 different worlds, but nothing had prepared him for this level of humiliation. Still, his weathered face showed no emotion as he waited for the laughter to die down. He had learned long ago that sometimes the best response to mockery was patient silence. "The humans request protection under our non-aggression pact," Zixathera continued, reading from a glowing tablet that appeared in her hand. "Yet they offer nothing of value in return. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their military is laughably weak and their planet holds no strategic value whatsoever. They have no rare minerals, no unique energy sources, and their location is far from any major trade routes." A new wave of laughter filled the chamber. General Thraxix of the Kretak military leaned forward on his 4 legs, his insect eyes focusing on Morrison with predatory interest. "Human captain, your species would be wise to accept protectorate status under a more advanced civilization. Perhaps my people could use additional manual labor in our mining colonies. Your kind seems well suited for physical work." Morrison finally spoke, his voice steady and calm despite the insults. "With respect, Ambassador and General, humanity requests only fair consideration for membership in the Galactic Federation. We may be young as a spacefaring species, but we have proven our ability to survive and adapt in the harshest conditions. We have explored our entire solar system, established colonies on hostile worlds, and maintained peace among our own people for over 50 years. The chamber erupted in even louder laughter. A Marathi delegate, his slug-like body quivering with amusement, spoke into his translation device with a voice that sounded like bubbles popping. "Survival? Your longest space war lasted barely 3 years between your moon colonies. The youngest species represented in this council has been fighting interstellar conflicts for over 2,000 of your years. You speak of harsh conditions, but you have never faced a real enemy." Another alien, this one resembling a walking tree with silver bark and glowing leaves, swayed as it spoke. "The humans talk of exploring their solar system as if it were a great achievement. Most of our children explore multiple star systems before reaching adulthood. Your entire species has visited fewer worlds than a single one of our trade expeditions." Zixathera raised one of her crystal hands for silence. "The decision of this council is unanimous. Humanity's application for Federation membership is denied. Your species lacks the technological advancement, military capability, and cultural sophistication required for membership. Furthermore, your planet's location makes it strategically worthless to our collective defense network." She paused, her crystal form shifting to a darker shade of blue. However, we are not without mercy. Several member species have expressed willingness to accept Earth as a protectorate. You would be granted basic protection from outside threats in exchange for certain services, labor, resource extraction, and perhaps entertainment for our more curious members who find primitive cultures amusing. Morrison felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice level. And if we refuse protectorate status? The Crystal Ambassador's form brightened with what might have been amusement. Then you remain unprotected in a galaxy full of dangers you cannot imagine. There are species out there that would see your planet as nothing more than raw materials to be harvested. Others might find your people useful as slaves or experimental subjects. The galaxy is not kind to the weak and unprotected. As she spoke, Morrison noticed something that none of the laughing aliens seemed to see. In the observation deck, high above the main chamber, Admiral Kate Sullivan sat perfectly still, her gray uniform blending into the shadows. Their eyes met for just a moment, and she gave him the slightest nod. The signal he had been waiting for. I understand the Council's decision, Morrison said formally. Humanity will consider its options carefully before responding to any protectorate offers. General Thraxix clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. Wise words, human. Take time to realize your place in the natural order. The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the way of the galaxy. As the session ended and the aliens began filing out of the chamber, still chuckling among themselves about the foolish humans and their pathetic starships, Morrison caught one more glimpse of Admiral Sullivan. She was speaking quietly into a small communication device, her expression serious and focused. The real test was about to begin, and these laughing aliens had no idea what humanity had been building, while they were busy being entertained by human weakness. Sometimes the best strategy was to let your enemies underestimate you completely. Morrison smiled for the first time since entering the chamber, though he made sure none of the aliens saw it. The greatest joke was yet to come, and humanity would have the last laugh. 3 standard galactic days passed after humanity's rejection from the Council, and the alien delegates had already forgotten about the pathetic humans and their laughable request for membership. The Crystal Palace continued its slow orbit around the neutral world of Haven Prime, where representatives from across the galaxy conducted their business in peace and safety. That peace was about to be shattered in the most terrifying way possible. The first warning came from a Vorthon monitoring station on the edge of the spiral arm, where automated sensors had been watching empty space for centuries. The station's artificial intelligence registered massive energy signatures moving through the void at impossible speeds. But the readings were so unusual that it took several hours for organic minds to understand what they meant. Commander Veltar, a young Vorthon officer with crystalline features similar to Ambassador Zixthera, stared at his display screens in growing horror. The energy signatures were not from any known technology, not even the most advanced ships in the Council fleet. These readings suggested something alive, something that had grown rather than been built, and something that moved through space like a living creature swimming through an ocean. Send immediate priority transmission to the Council chambers, he ordered his subordinates, his crystal form flickering with the colors of fear. We have detected multiple unknown contacts approaching Council space at high velocity. Classification unknown, intentions unknown, but the energy readings suggest massive bioships of unprecedented size. The message reached the Council chambers just as Ambassador Zixthera was enjoying her morning meditation, a process that involved changing her crystal structure to different musical frequencies. The urgent communication shattered her peaceful state, and within minutes the emergency session bells were ringing throughout the station. Representatives from dozens of worlds rushed to the main chamber, many still wearing their sleeping garments or relaxation accessories. The normally dignified aliens pushed and shoved to reach their seats, their various forms of panic creating a chaos of sounds, colors, and smells that the translation systems could barely handle. "What is the meaning of this emergency session?" demanded General Thrax, his insect form vibrating with irritation at being awakened early. "The Kretok military has detected no threats in our territorial space." Zixthara's crystal body had turned a deep red color, something that only happened when she experienced extreme stress. Her voice, usually musical and pleasant, now carried sharp harmonic frequencies that made several aliens wince. "Long-range sensors have detected the emergence of the Drakmor hegemony from their isolation zone. They are moving toward Council core worlds with what appears to be their entire military force." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background chatter of translation devices stopped as every alien present absorbed the meaning of those words. The Drakmor hegemony was a name that parents used to frighten children across the galaxy, a species so violent and efficient in warfare that they had been forced into isolation after nearly destroying 3 entire star systems in their last campaign. A Marathi representative, his slug-like body turning pale with fear, spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "That is impossible." The Drakmor agreed to the isolation accords 500 years ago. They swore binding oaths to remain in their designated sector until the year 3000 by human calendar measurements. "They gave us their word of honor." "Honor," spat an ethereal being, his energy form flickering with dark patterns. "The Drakmor have no concept of honor as we understand it. They see only strength and weakness, victory and defeat. If they have broken isolation, it means they believe they are strong enough to conquer the entire galaxy." The main display screen activated, showing tactical readouts that made even the most experienced military officers in the chamber step backward in shock. Thousands of contacts were moving through space in perfect formation, their bioships pulsing with life energy that registered on sensors from light years away. Each ship was unique, grown rather than built, and they moved with the coordinated precision of a hunting pack. Our intelligence estimates suggest the Drakmor have been preparing for this moment. Throughout their entire isolation period, reported a Kretak military analyst, his 6 arms working frantically over multiple control panels. They have not been sitting idle in their sector. They have been breeding, evolving, and perfecting their military capabilities. These ships are larger and more advanced than anything we faced in the previous war. Ambassador Zixathara studied the tactical display with growing dread. The Drakmor fleet was not moving randomly through space. They had chosen their route carefully, targeting the most heavily populated and strategically important worlds in Council territory. Their path would take them through 7 major systems, each containing billions of innocent civilians who had no hope of defending themselves against such overwhelming force. "How long until they reach the first populated system?" she asked, though she feared the answer. "Kepler Station will be in range of their lead elements in approximately 72 standard hours," came the reply. "Our defensive fleets are already moving to intercept, but preliminary calculations suggest we are severely outmatched in both numbers and individual ship capability." The chamber erupted in panicked discussions as representatives tried to contact their home worlds and coordinate evacuation plans. Some aliens were calling for immediate surrender. Others demanded that the entire Council fleet be thrown against the invaders regardless of casualties. And a few were already making plans to flee to the Outer Rim territories where they might hide until the crisis passed. In all this chaos, one small group remained remarkably calm. Captain Jake Morrison and Lieutenant Lisa Grant sat in the human observation section, watching the alien panic with expressions of professional interest rather than fear. Morrison was taking notes on a simple paper tablet, something that several aliens found oddly primitive given the circumstances. "Curious reaction patterns," Morrison murmured to Grant, loud enough for nearby aliens to overhear. "Mass panic followed by conflicting strategic assessments. No unified command structure or predetermined response protocols for this type of threat." Grant nodded, her own observations equally clinical. "The emotional responses are interfering with their tactical planning. Fear is making them consider surrender before they have even engaged the enemy." Their calm discussion in the middle of the crisis was so unusual that several aliens began paying attention to the humans instead of their own desperate planning. How could these primitive beings remain so composed when facing the greatest military threat the galaxy had known in centuries? Morrison stood up slowly, his simple uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate clothing and natural forms of the aliens around him. He cleared his throat politely, a sound that somehow carried through the entire chamber despite the ongoing chaos. "Excuse me, honorable delegates," he said in his steady military voice. "The human delegation would like to formally request permission to assist in the defense of Council space against this Drakmor threat." The reaction was immediate and universal. Every single alien in the chamber stopped what they were doing and stared at the human captain with expressions that ranged from disbelief to outright incredulity. Then, as if someone had triggered a synchronized response, they all began laughing. The laughter was different from what the humans had experienced during their membership hearing. This was not the cruel mockery of superior beings looking down on primitives. This was the hysterical laughter of desperate people who had just heard something so absurdly impossible that their minds could only process it as comedy. General, Thrax clicked his mandibles so hard they created sparks. Human, your entire species possesses fewer than 200 functional warships, most of which would be classified as escort vessels by our standards. The Drakmor fleet contains over 5,000 bioships, each one capable of adapting to any weapon system we might use against it. A Marathi delegate was laughing so hard that slime was dripping from his body onto the chamber floor. They want to help fight the Drakmor. These creatures who cannot even build proper faster-than-light engines think they can face an enemy that has defeated our greatest military minds. But Morrison was not finished speaking. He waited patiently for the laughter to die down, then continued with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the crisis. We understand the numerical disparity, General. However, humanity has considerable experience with asymmetric warfare against superior forces. We would like to contribute what we can to the common defense. The laughter resumed, but some of the aliens were beginning to notice something strange about the human's behavior. He was not acting like someone making a desperate gesture or trying to gain favor through a futile offer of help. He was acting like someone who knew something they did not, and that realization was starting to make a few of the more perceptive delegates feel uncomfortable. The real surprise was yet to come. The laughter in the council chamber was still echoing off the crystal walls when the main doors opened with a soft hiss of pressurized air. Every alien head turned to see who would dare interrupt an emergency session, and their amusement quickly changed to confusion as they watched a new human enter the chamber. Admiral Kate Sullivan walked with the confident stride of someone who had commanded starships in actual combat, not just in simulations or training exercises. Her dress uniform was perfectly pressed and displayed ribbons and medals that none of the aliens recognized but somehow conveyed authority that transcended species. Behind her walked Commander Rick Davis, whose reputation as a military strategist had reached even the most isolated corners of the galaxy through intelligence networks that tracked dangerous individuals. Sullivan's gray hair was pulled back in a regulation military style, and her blue eyes swept across the assembled aliens with the calculating gaze of a predator, evaluating potential threats. She was shorter than most of the beings in the chamber, but something about her presence made even the largest aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Honorable delegates," Sullivan said, her voice carrying the absolute confidence of someone who had never lost a strategic engagement. "I am Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Human Defense Force. On behalf of Earth and all human colonies, I formally offer our military assistance in the defense against the Drakmor invasion." The crystal form of Ambassador Zixathera flickered through several color changes as she processed this unexpected development. Her musical voice carried sharp harmonic overtones of irritation as she responded. "Admiral, with all due respect to your rank, your entire species possesses fewer than 200 functional warships according to our intelligence reports. The Drakmor fleet alone outnumbers your forces by more than 25 to 1, and that does not account for the vast technological superiority of their bioships." Sullivan smiled, and several aliens found themselves taking an involuntary step backward. There was something about that expression that seemed predatory rather than friendly, like a wolf showing its teeth before an attack. "Ambassador, numbers are not always the determining factor in warfare. Sometimes success depends on having the right tool for the specific job at hand." General Thraxix leaned forward on his chitinous legs, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lighting in complex patterns. "Human Admiral, your largest vessel is barely the size of our escort frigates. Our intelligence suggests that your most advanced weapons are chemical rockets and primitive energy beams. What could you possibly contribute to a battle against an enemy that has evolved beyond conventional warfare?" Commander Davis stepped forward, activating a holographic tablet that displayed tactical information in three-dimensional form. The data was surprisingly detailed and showed knowledge of military theory that impressed even the most experienced alien officers present. "General, are you familiar with the human concept of asymmetric warfare? The strategic principle of using unconventional methods to overcome superior conventional forces?" Before any alien could respond to this question, urgent warning signals began flashing throughout the chamber. Emergency communication channels activated automatically, flooding the room with reports from across council space. The Drakmor Vanguard had arrived at Kepler Station 6 hours ahead of schedule, and the first defensive line was already engaged in combat. Holographic displays materialized above the central platform, showing real-time footage of the battle that made even the most experienced military minds in the chamber freeze with horror. Sleek organic vessels that looked like living nightmares were systematically dismantling traditional Council battleships with weapons that defied easy classification. The Drakmor bioships moved through space like predatory animals, their hulls rippling and changing as they adapted to each new threat. When Council ships fired energy weapons, the alien hulls developed reflective surfaces that turned the beams aside. When kinetic weapons struck their targets, the organic armor simply flowed around the impact points and sealed itself within seconds. "Impossible," whispered a ethereal representative, his energy form dimming with despair. "They are adapting to our weapons in real time. Each ship is learning from the attacks of its neighbors and sharing that knowledge across the entire fleet. At this rate of evolution, they will become completely invulnerable to our arsenal within hours." The tactical displays showed the grim mathematics of the engagement. Council ships were being destroyed at a rate of 3-1, and their weapons were becoming less effective with each passing minute. The Drakmor bioships were not just winning the battle, they were learning from it and becoming stronger with each exchange of fire. "Estimated time until complete breakthrough of the first defense line?" asked Zixithera, her crystal form now a deep shade of purple that indicated extreme stress among her species. "Keen hours at current casualty rates," came the reply from a Kretok analyst whose clicking sounds had become rapid and panicked. "The second defense line will delay them perhaps another day, but the mathematical projections are clear. They will reach the core worlds within 1 standard week, and by that time they will be immune to everything in our weapons." Inventory, the chamber filled with the sounds of despair in a dozen different languages as representatives contacted their home worlds with evacuation orders and final messages. Some aliens were openly weeping, others were praying to their various gods, and a few had simply shut down their higher brain functions rather than face the reality of total defeat. In the midst of this chaos, Admiral Sullivan remained perfectly calm, checking a chronometer on her wrist with the casual manner of someone timing a training exercise. "Delegates, in approximately 8 minutes, you are going to understand why humanity has survived every extinction event that our world has thrown at us over the past 4 billion years." The Marathi delegate who had been laughing earlier was now producing distressed gurgling sounds as he spoke into his translator. "Admiral, our long-range sensors have detected your single vessel approaching the combat zone. It appears to be significantly larger than our intelligence reports suggested. How did you manage to construct something of that size without our knowledge?" Sullivan's predatory smile widened slightly. "Delegate, your intelligence services spent so much time laughing at our primitive technology and crude manufacturing capabilities that none of you bothered to ask what we were actually building while you were not watching. You saw what we wanted you to see. On the main tactical display, a new contact appeared at the edge of sensor range. The object was massive, angular, and moving at velocities that should have been impossible for something of its apparent size. As the sensor readings updated, gasps of surprise echoed through the chamber from aliens who understood the implications of what they were seeing. "That cannot be accurate," breathed General Thraxix, his mandibles clicking in confusion. "No ship of that mass should be capable of those acceleration rates. The structural stresses alone would tear apart any known construction material. The power requirements would exceed the output of a small star." Commander Davis looked up from his tactical display with an expression that might have been amusement. "General, you are thinking like someone who builds starships for impressive appearances and diplomatic ceremonies. Humans build ships for one purpose only: to win wars against impossible odds." The sensor readings continued to update as the massive human vessel approached the battle zone, and with each new data point the aliens became more confused and frightened. This was not the primitive technology they had been expecting from humanity. This was something that challenged their fundamental understanding of what was possible in spacecraft design. "Admiral," Zixthera said in a voice that had lost all its musical quality, "what exactly has humanity been building in secret?" Sullivan looked directly at the Crystal Ambassador with eyes that held secrets spanning decades of preparation. "Ambassador, you are about to witness the culmination of 50 years of human engineering, 500 years of human military doctrine, and 4 billion years of human survival instinct. You are about to learn why we never give up, never surrender, and never accept defeat as the final answer. She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering the final line that would be remembered in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. You are about to discover what happens when Earth decides to go to war. Deep in the shadow of Jupiter's great red spot, where the gas giant's massive storms had raged for centuries, something vast and terrible stirred to life for the first time. The UNS Retribution had waited in complete silence for 6 months, its enormous hull hidden among the swirling gases and electromagnetic interference that made detection nearly impossible even for the most advanced alien sensors in over 2 kilometers in length and half a kilometer in width. The Dreadnought dwarfed anything humanity had previously constructed in space. Its angular hull was covered in armor plating that had been forged in the heart of Jupiter's fusion reactors, and its weapon systems drew power from reactors that could have supplied electricity to entire planets. This was not just a warship, it was humanity's ultimate statement of defiance against a hostile universe. Captain Ben Carter sat in the command chair at the center of the bridge, a massive space filled with hundreds of control stations and holographic displays that showed every system on the ship. His weathered hands rested calmly on the chair's armrests as he watched his crew of 800 specialists prepare for what would either be humanity's greatest triumph or its final gesture of defiance against the galaxy that had rejected them. Final systems check complete, Captain, announced Commander Linda Shaw from her position at the tactical station. Her voice carried the steady professionalism of someone who had trained for this moment for over a decade. All weapon systems are online, defensive screens are at maximum power, and the crew reports ready for combat operations. Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez called out power readings from her station near the massive reactor displays. Fusion plants 1 through 12 are operating at optimal efficiency, Captain. We have enough fuel for 6 months of continuous combat operations, and the emergency reserves could extend that to a full year if necessary. Weapons Officer Tony Phillips ran his hands over controls that had never been tested in actual combat, only in the most realistic simulations that human science could create. Primary kinetic bombardment systems are loaded and charged, sir. Plasma lance batteries show green across the board. The special ordnance is armed and ready for deployment on your command. Carter nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed the Drakmor fleet's relentless advance through Council space. 3 defensive lines had already fallen, and the alien forces were in full retreat toward their core worlds. The reports coming through subspace communications painted a picture of complete military disaster for the Galactic Council. Take us out of Jupiter's shadow. Helm, Carter ordered, in a voice that carried absolute authority. Set course for the Kepler Station battle zone. Maximum military acceleration. It is time for the galaxy to learn that humanity does not go quietly into the night. The massive Dreadnought began moving with impossible grace for something of its size, its advanced propulsion systems creating brilliant streams of fusion fire that lit up Jupiter's atmosphere like a second sun. The ship accelerated at rates that should have reduced its crew to paste against the bulkheads. But humanity had solved the problems of inertial compensation decades ago, using principles that the arrogant aliens had never bothered to investigate. Meanwhile, in the council chambers, the alien delegates watched in growing horror as their military forces were systematically destroyed by an enemy that adapted to every strategy they attempted. The Drakmor bioships were not just winning. They were learning at an incredible rate and sharing that knowledge across their entire fleet through some form of biological communication network. The situation is hopeless, moaned a Marathi delegate, his slug-like body leaving trails of stress slime across his seating area. They have adapted to 90% of our weapon systems, and the remaining 10% are becoming less effective with each engagement. Soon they will be completely immune to everything we can throw at them. Admiral Sullivan stood at her observation post, checking her chronometer with the patience of someone who had planned this moment down to the second. Her calm demeanor in the face of universal panic was starting to unnerve even the most composed aliens in the chamber. Delegates, in approximately 4 minutes, you are going to understand why humans have never accepted the concept of inevitable defeat. Ambassador Zix Thera's crystal form was flickering rapidly between colors as her species equivalent of panic set in. Admiral, Our long-range sensors have detected your vessel approaching the combat zone, and the readings are frankly impossible. How did you manage to construct something of that size and mass without our surveillance networks detecting the construction process?" Sullivan's smile remained constant, but her eyes held depths that suggested knowledge accumulated over decades of careful planning. "Ambassador, your surveillance networks were watching our known shipyards and manufacturing facilities. You never thought to look in the places where we told you nothing was happening." The tactical displays suddenly registered a new contact entering the battle zone, and the sensor readings that appeared on the screens made several aliens question whether their equipment was malfunctioning. The human vessel was not just large, it was impossibly massive and moving at speeds that violated everything they understood about the relationship between mass and acceleration. "Those readings cannot be correct," General Thraxig said, his insect form vibrating with confusion. "No known material science can produce a structure of that size capable of those performance characteristics. The power requirements alone would exceed the total energy output of our most advanced reactor designs. Commander." Davis looked up from his tactical analysis with an expression that mixed professional pride with something that might have been anticipation. "General, you are correct that no known material science can produce such results." The key word in that statement is known. Humanity has been developing new approaches to physics and engineering for the past 50 years, approaches that we chose not to share with the galactic community. The alien delegates stared at their displays in stunned silence as more sensor data flowed in about the approaching human dreadnought. Every new reading seemed to contradict the previous one, painting a picture of a vessel that operated according to principles that challenged their fundamental understanding of what was possible in spacecraft design. "The acceleration curves suggest they have solved the inertial compensation problem completely," whispered a ethereal representative, his energy form dimming with what could only be described as shock. "The power signatures indicate fusion systems operating at efficiency levels we believed were theoretically impossible. And the mass readings suggest armor protection that should collapse under its own weight." Sullivan nodded approvingly at the alien's analysis. "Your scientists were correct that such things should be theoretically impossible, using the approaches to physics that you have been pursuing for the last 1,000 years. Humanity chose to investigate some alternative theories that your species dismissed as impractical." On the main display, the UNS Retribution dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system, its massive form immediately drawing the attention of every sensor array in the battle zone. The Drakmor fleet, which had been systematically destroying the retreating Council forces, suddenly found themselves facing something completely unexpected. The bioships that had been adapting so successfully to alien weapons paused their pursuit as they attempted to analyze this new threat. Their organic sensors probed the human dreadnought, trying to understand its design principles and predict its capabilities. But the readings they received confused even their evolved intelligence. "They are scanning us, Captain," reported Shaw from her tactical station. "The Drakmor bioships are attempting to analyze our hull composition, weapon systems, and defensive capabilities." Carter's expression remained calm as he studied the tactical display showing 57 enemy vessels arranged in a formation that spoke of predatory intelligence. "Let them scan to their heart's content, Commander. They are about to learn that some problems cannot be solved through adaptation and evolution." The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. 57 bioships that had never known defeat faced a single human dreadnought that represented the culmination of humanity's greatest engineering achievement. The outcome would determine not just the fate of the Council worlds, but humanity's place in a galaxy that had underestimated them completely. The UNS Retribution hung in the darkness of space like a monument to human determination, its massive hull reflecting the distant light of Kepler's star as it faced the most feared military force in the galaxy. Around the human dreadnought, the wreckage of Council ships drifted in slowly expanding clouds, testament to the devastating effectiveness of Drakmor bioweapons. Captain Ben Carter stood on his bridge and studied the enemy formation with the analytical mind of someone who had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. 57 Drakmor vessels floated in perfect coordination, their organic hulls pulsing with bioelectrical energy as they completed their scan of the human intruder. Each enemy ship was a masterpiece of evolutionary warfare, grown rather than built, and capable of adapting to any threat within minutes of first contact. They are beautiful in a terrifying way, observed Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez from her monitoring station. The bio readings suggest they are already beginning to analyze our hull composition and energy signatures. Their adaptation process has started. Let them analyze all they want, Carter replied with calm confidence. Mr. Phillips, are our primary weapon systems ready for engagement? Weapons Officer Tony Phillips checked his displays one final time, his hands moving over controls that represented 50 years of human engineering innovation. Kinetic bombardment cannons are loaded and charged, Captain. Depleted uranium slugs are in the launch tubes, and the magnetic acceleration systems are operating at full power. Plasma lance batteries show optimal energy levels, and the special ordnance packages are armed and ready for deployment. The Drakmor fleet began moving toward the human vessel with the coordinated precision of a hunting pack. Their bioships rippled and changed as they approached, already beginning the adaptation process that had made them invincible against every Council weapon system. These creatures had evolved beyond the need for traditional technology, becoming living weapons that improved themselves with each battle. In the Council chambers, the alien delegates watched the confrontation unfold on their displays with a mixture of fascination and horror. They had seen the Drakmor destroy 3 entire defense fleets using tactics that rendered conventional warfare obsolete, and now they were about to witness humanity's single ship attempt what their combined forces had failed to achieve. The human vessel is actually engaging them, whispered an ethereal representative, his energy form flickering with disbelief. 1 ship against 57 of the most advanced bioweapons ever evolved. This is either incredible courage or complete madness. Admiral Sullivan maintained her position at the observation deck, her expression revealing nothing as she watched the tactical displays. Delegates, you are about to witness something that has not been seen in this galaxy for quite some time. You are about to watch humanity demonstrate what we do best. The lead Drakmor bioship fired the opening shot of the engagement, a concentrated plasma burst that carried enough energy to vaporize any known Council vessel. The superheated stream of particles struck the Retribution's forward hull and dispersed harmlessly across armor plating that had been specifically designed to handle such attacks. Interesting, Carter commented as he watched the enemy weapons' effect on his ship's defenses. Their plasma output is approximately 30% lower than our projections suggested. It appears our intelligence estimates were conservative. Mr. Phillips, you are authorized to begin the demonstration. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come, analyzed by strategists trying to understand how a single human vessel accomplished what entire alien fleets could not. The Retribution's forward kinetic cannon fired its first shot. A depleted uranium slug accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by magnetic systems that drew power from the ship's massive fusion reactors. The projectile carried more kinetic energy than most alien starship reactors produced in an entire year, and it struck the lead Drakmor vessel with the force of a small asteroid impact. The bioship, which had been attempting to adapt its hull structure to resist the incoming projectile, simply ceased to exist as the slug punched completely through it and continued on to destroy 2 more vessels in the formation behind it. The remaining Drakmor ships reacted with the speed that had made them so dangerous, their organic hulls rippling as they attempted to grow thicker armor plating that could withstand the human kinetic weapons. Their evolutionary adaptation process went into overdrive, biological systems working frantically to develop new defensive capabilities. Remarkable, Carter observed with scientific interest as he watched the enemy ships literally growing new armor in real time. They are actually trying to evolve hull plating thick enough to stop our kinetic rounds. The biological engineering is genuinely impressive, but ultimately futile. The problem facing the Drakmor was fundamental and insurmountable. Their adaptive capabilities, which had proven so effective against energy-based weapons, were useless against simple kinetic force applied at extreme velocities. No biological material, no matter how quickly it evolved or how thick it grew, could survive having a telephone pole-sized piece of metal punched through it at near light speed. The Retribution's weapon systems fired in a carefully orchestrated sequence that demonstrated the pinnacle of human military doctrine. Each kinetic round was targeted not just at individual enemy vessels, but at specific points that would maximize the destruction while conserving ammunition. The human crew had trained for this battle for years, and their precision was absolutely devastating. Drakmor bioships that had dominated every previous engagement found themselves helpless against an attack method that simply could not be adapted to or evolved beyond. Their living hulls, no matter how thick they grew or how cleverly they reconfigured themselves, offered no protection against projectiles that carried the kinetic energy of small moons. Enemy formation is breaking apart. Captain, reported Commander Shaw from Tactical. 17 vessels destroyed, 23 showing critical damage, and the remainder are attempting to retreat. Their adaptation processes appear to be failing completely. Carter nodded with satisfaction as he watched the most feared military force in the galaxy scatter before human firepower. Continue engagement until all enemy vessels are neutralized or have fled beyond weapons range. We did not come this far to settle for a partial victory. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes from first shot to final enemy destruction. When it ended, the Drakmor hegemony's grand invasion fleet existed only as expanding clouds of organic debris drifting through the Kepler system. The UNS Retribution hung motionless in space, its hull unmarked by enemy fire, its crew having accomplished what an entire galactic civilization had believed impossible. In the council chambers, absolute silence reigned as the alien delegates stared at their displays in complete shock. The tactical readings showed no enemy contacts remaining in the battle zone, only the single human Dreadnought and the wreckage of what had been the galaxy's most unstoppable military force. Finally, Ambassador Zixathera found her voice, though it emerged as barely more than a whisper from her crystal form. How did you accomplish what our combined fleets could not? Admiral Sullivan straightened her uniform and addressed the chamber with the same calm professionalism she had maintained throughout the entire crisis. Honorable delegates, while your scientists spent centuries perfecting energy weapons and adaptive defense systems, humanity dedicated the last 50 years to perfecting the ancient art of throwing rocks at very high velocities. Sometimes the oldest solutions are still the best solutions. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in before continuing with a slight smile. Your weapons were sophisticated, and your defenses were impressive, but they were designed to counter other sophisticated technology. We chose a different approach. We built weapons that simply cannot be defended against, no matter how advanced the target might be. The silence stretched on as the aliens absorbed the reality of what they had witnessed. Their most advanced enemy had been destroyed by what was essentially the ultimate refinement of the first weapon ever used by primitive humans. The thrown rock elevated to cosmic proportions through human engineering and determination. Now then, Sullivan continued, her tone becoming businesslike, I believe we were previously discussing humanity's application for Federation membership. Given recent developments, I suggest we might want to reconsider the terms of our relationship. We have several sister ships to the Retribution currently under construction, and I think you will find that humanity makes a much better ally than enemy. The chamber remained silent as every alien delegate frantically tried to calculate how quickly they could revise their diplomatic protocols to include phrases like strategic alliance and most favored species status. The age of human dominance had begun, and the galaxy would never again make the mistake of underestimating the quiet determination of the species from the small blue world in the Sol system. Outside, the UNS Retribution began its journey home, leaving behind a galaxy that had learned the hard way that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their absolute refusal to accept defeat as the final answer to any problem.